The alarm started screaming at 3 in the morning, station time. Fleet Admiral Tae-ho rolled out of his bunk and grabbed his uniform, muscle memory taking over after 30 years of service. The Sovereign's eye never slept, its massive sensor, arrays constantly watching the empty space at the edge of Imperial territory. But nothing had triggered the Deep Space Alert system in over 2 decades. Tae-ho ran through the corridors of his command station, past crew members stumbling from their quarters with the same confused urgency he felt. The bridge buzzed with activity when he arrived. Officers hunched over their screens, voices tight with excitement and concern. "Report!" Tae-ho barked, sliding into his command chair. Lieutenant Hyun-woo turned from the sensor station, his young face pale. "Sir, we detected an energy signature at grid reference 347891. It appeared suddenly, no hyperspace entry detected." Tae-ho frowned. Nothing moved through space without leaving traces. Hyperspace jumps created distinctive energy patterns that Imperial sensors could detect from light years away. Equipment malfunction? Negative, sir. We ran full diagnostics twice. The signature is real and it's moving. The main display flickered to life, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space. A red dot pulsed at the edge of the grid, moving slowly but steadily toward the inner systems. Tae-ho studied the readings, scrolling past on secondary screens. Energy output was massive but stable. The propulsion system was unlike anything in Imperial records. "Size estimate?" he asked. "Approximately 800 meters long, sir. But the shape—" Hyun-woo hesitated. "It doesn't match any known ship. Design." Dr. Ji-won appeared at Tae-ho's shoulder. The xenobiologist looked tired but alert, her gray hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. She'd been studying the readings since the alert sounded. "Admiral, this is unprecedented. The materials appear to be some kind of crystalline metal composite. Our sensors can barely penetrate the hull." Tae-ho felt a chill run down his spine. In 300 years of galactic expansion, the Empire had encountered dozens of alien species. Most were primitive, easily absorbed into Imperial society. A few had put up decent fights before surrendering, but none had technology that Imperial. Science couldn't understand within days of first contact. "Could it be a new species?" he asked. "Possible but unlikely," Dr. Ji-won replied. "We've mapped every system within 50 light years, no signs of advanced civilization anywhere." Then where did it come from? Before anyone could answer, the sensor readings changed. The unknown ship had stopped moving and now hung motionless, in space, as if it was waiting for something. Tae-ho made his decision. "Contact Captain Min-soo. Tell him to take the Stellar Vigilance and investigate. Full diplomatic protocols." The Stellar Vigilance was a fast reconnaissance cruiser, built for exactly this kind of mission. Captain Min-soo was one of Tae-ho's best officers, calm under pressure and experienced in first contact situations. If anyone could handle this mystery, it was him. 2 hours later, Min-soo's voice crackled through the communication system. "Sovereign's Eye, this is Vigilance. We have visual contact with the unknown vessel. Send us the feed, Captain," Tae-ho ordered. The main screen shifted to show the view from the Vigilance's forward cameras. Tae-ho heard several crew members gasp. The ship floating before them looked nothing like any human or alien design they'd ever seen. Its hull was smooth and dark, almost black, with strange geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow across its surface. Long blade-like projections extended from its main body, and a soft blue glow emanated from what might have been engine ports. "It's beautiful," whispered Communications Officer Yoon-ji. Beautiful and terrifying, Tae-ho thought. The ship radiated an aura of advanced technology that made Imperial designs look crude by comparison. Even sitting motionless in space, it projected a sense of barely contained power. "Any response to our hails, Captain?" Tae-ho asked. "Negative, Admiral. We've tried all standard frequencies, even some of the older alien languages in our database. Nothing. Dr. G1 studied her readings. Admiral, the energy patterns are fluctuating. It's almost like it's scanning us. On the screen, the unknown ship remained perfectly still, but Tae-ho could feel its attention like a weight pressing down on him. Somehow, he knew that whatever intelligence controlled that vessel was studying them just as intently as they were studying it. Captain Minsu, try a direct approach. Move to within 5 kilometers and repeat all hail frequencies. Copy that, Admiral. The Vigilance's engines flared as it approached the mysterious craft. The size difference became apparent as they drew closer. The unknown ship dwarfed the Imperial cruiser, its sleek hull stretching away into the darkness of space. Still no response, Admiral, Minsu reported. But I'm reading massive energy buildups throughout their hull. Whatever they're powering. Up, it's big! Tae-ho felt sweat beading on his forehead. All stop, Captain. Do not approach any closer. For several long minutes, the two ships hung in space facing each other. The tension on the bridge of Sovereign's Eye was thick enough to cut with a blade. Every officer watched the screens, waiting for something to happen. Then it did. The unknown ship moved. Not slowly, not with the gradual acceleration of normal space travel. 1 second it was motionless. The next it was streaking away at impossible speed, leaving only a brief flash of blue light where it had been. "Track it!" Tae-ho shouted. "I'm trying, sir," Hyunwoo called back, his fingers flying over his controls. "It's moving faster than anything in our records. Wait, it's gone into hyperspace." "Jump signature? That's the problem, sir. There is no jump signature. Whatever propulsion system they're using, it's not hyperspace as we understand it." Tae-ho stared at the empty space on the screen where the ship had been. In his 30 years of service, he'd seen combat, exploration, diplomacy, and discovery, but he'd never felt the deep, bone-chilling certainty that he was facing something far beyond his understanding. "Dr. G1, I want a full analysis of everything. We recorded every energy reading, every scan, every piece of data." "Yes, sir. But Admiral..." She hesitated. "What is it, Doctor?" "In those final seconds before it left, I detected something else. The ship wasn't just scanning us. It was copying our database signatures, learning about our technology, our weapons, our defenses." The bridge fell silent. Tae-ho felt his blood turn to ice water. An unknown ship with impossible technology had just studied Imperial forces and disappeared without a trace. Worse, it had done so with casual ease, as if they posed no threat whatsoever. "Send an immediate report to High Command," he ordered quietly. "Priority Alpha. Tell them we have a new player in the game and they're not playing by our rules." As his officers scrambled to carry out orders, Tae-ho remained in his command chair, staring at the empty space on the screen. Somewhere out there in the vast darkness, that ship was still moving, still watching, still learning. And somehow he knew this first contact would not be their last. The Empire had just encountered something that challenged everything they thought. They knew about their place in the universe. Tae-ho only hoped they would be ready when it returned, because deep in his gut he was certain it would return. 3 days had passed since the first contact, and Commodore Dong-wook was beginning to think the whole thing had been exaggerated. Reports of mysterious ships with impossible technology sounded like the kind of stories junior officers made up to explain equipment failures or navigational errors. His patrol fleet, 7 strong Imperial cruisers led by his flagship Iron Dominion, was conducting routine sweeps through the outer territories when the call came in. Mining Station Kepler 442b reported unknown vessels in their orbital space, conducting what appeared to be detailed scans of their facilities. "Finally, some action," muttered Lieutenant Commander Bo-Ram from her position at the weapons console. The patrol had been quiet for weeks, nothing but empty space and asteroid fields. Dong-wook studied the tactical display as his fleet approached the mining world. 3 contacts showed on the screen, moving in precise formation around the planet. They were smaller than the ship reported at Sovereign's Eye, but the energy signatures matched. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Mining Director Kyung-ho, reported Communications Specialist Wonbin. He says the unknown ships have been scanning their operation for 6 hours. They haven't responded to any communication attempts. Put me through to the mining station, Dong-wook ordered. The main screen flickered to show a middle-aged man in work clothes, his face tight with concern. Behind him, the mining station's control room bustled with nervous activity. Commodore, thank the stars you're here, Director Kyung-ho said. These ships just appeared and started scanning everything. Our orbital platforms, the surface installations, even our cargo haulers. They're not responding to any of our hails. Have they made any threatening moves? Dong-wook asked. No direct threats, but their scans are incredibly deep. They're mapping everything down to individual component specifications. It's like they're planning something. Dong-wook nodded grimly. We'll handle this. Keep your people clear of the orbital zone. He switched to the fleet tactical frequency. All ships, this is Iron Dominion. Form attack formation Beta 7. We're dealing with unknown hostile vessels in violation of Imperial space. The 7 cruisers moved into position, their sleek hulls gleaming under the light of Kepler 4042's star. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a small moon. Whatever these mysterious vessels were, they would face the full might of Imperial military technology. Unknown vessels. This is Commodore Dong-wook of the Imperial Navy, he broadcast, on all frequencies. You are in violation of Imperial space. Cease your activities and withdraw immediately, or we will consider your actions hostile. For several seconds, nothing happened. The 3 unknown ships continued their slow orbit of the mining world, apparently ignoring the Imperial fleet entirely. Then something changed. One of the mysterious vessels broke formation and began moving toward Dong-wook's fleet. It was smaller than his cruisers, perhaps 400 meters long, but something about its movement made his tactical officer nervous. Sir, the approaching vessel is accelerating beyond normal parameters, reported Lieutenant Sang-wook. Their acceleration curve doesn't match any known propulsion system. Dong-wook watched the tactical display with growing concern. The unknown ship wasn't just fast. It was moving in ways that should have been impossible. Sharp turns at high speed, sudden stops, acceleration patterns that would turn any living crew into paste. Are there life signs aboard that vessel? He asked. Unknown, sir. Our sensors can barely penetrate their hull. The mysterious ship stopped just outside the range of Imperial weapons, hanging motionless as if studying the fleet arrayed before it. Then, without warning, it launched something. Missile inbound, Lieutenant Commander Bo Ram shouted. No, wait! It's too slow. Probe of some kind. The object moved toward Iron Dominion at a leisurely pace, clearly not intended as a weapon. But Dong-wook had been in the Imperial Navy long enough to know that anything could be a threat. That's close enough, he decided. All ships open fire. Destroy the probe and disable the launching vessel. 7 Imperial cruisers opened fire simultaneously. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and kinetic projectiles filled the space between the fleets with deadly energy. It was enough firepower to crack a small asteroid. The probe vanished in a flash of superheated metal and gas, but the unknown ship did something impossible. Instead of taking damage, it seemed to absorb the incoming fire. Energy weapons struck its hull and simply disappeared, as if the ship was drinking them up. Kinetic rounds hit and were somehow deflected, spinning away harmlessly into space. What in the Emperor's name? Dong-wook whispered. The unknown ship began to move, and Dong-wook realized they had made a terrible mistake. This wasn't a probe or exploration vessel. It was a warship, and they had just declared war on it. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. The mysterious vessel moved through Dong-wook's formation like a blade through silk. Its weapons weren't the crude energy cannons the Empire used, but something far more elegant and deadly, beams of impossible brightness, reached out and touched each Imperial cruiser with surgical precision. The Iron Dominion shook as something cut through its shields like they weren't even there. Dongwook felt the deck plates vibrating under his feet as critical systems began. Failing throughout the ship? Shields down to 30%? Bo-Ram reported, her voice tight with disbelief. How are they penetrating our defenses? Engine room reporting massive power drain, added Engineer Hae Young. Whatever they're hitting us with, it's draining our energy systems. On the tactical display, Dongwook watched his fleet fall apart. The cruiser Stellar Pride lost power and began drifting. The Heavy Strike lost its weapons systems and was firing emergency flares. One by one, his ships were being systematically disabled, and through it all, the unknown vessel danced between them untouched, its impossible maneuvers making a mockery of everything Dongwook thought he knew about space combat. "Sir, we need to retreat," Lieutenant Sang-wook called out. "We're being torn apart!" "All ships, emergency withdraw," Dongwook ordered. "Jump to rally point 77 Delta." But even retreat was denied to them. As each Imperial cruiser tried to power up its hyperspace drive, they found their systems drained of energy. The unknown ship had somehow neutralized their ability to escape. In 4 minutes and 37 seconds, it was over. 7 Imperial cruisers hung dead in space, their crews alive but helpless in disabled ships. Emergency power kept life support running, but everything else was gone. Weapons, shields, engines, communications, all drained of power by whatever impossible technology the unknown vessel possessed. Dongwook sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that now showed only red warning indicators. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to restore basic systems, but he knew it was hopeless. They had been defeated so completely that they couldn't even understand how it had been done. The unknown ship moved through the wreckage of his fleet, apparently scanning each disabled cruiser. Then, as suddenly as the attack had begun, it stopped. The mysterious vessel returned to its original position and resumed its orbit of the mining world, as if nothing had happened. "Sir," Communications Specialist Wanbin said quietly, "I'm receiving an automated message from Mining Station Kepler 442b. They're launching rescue shuttles to pick up our emergency pods." Dongwook nodded numbly. At least his crews would survive. But his pride, his confidence in Imperial superiority, and his belief that humanity was the dominant force in the galaxy had all died in those 4.5 minutes. As rescue shuttles began moving toward the drifting hulks of his fleet, Dongwook stared out at the unknown ships still orbiting the mining world. They had made their point with brutal efficiency. The Empire wasn't as powerful as it thought. There were forces in the galaxy that could crush Imperial fleets without breaking stride. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrifying thought began to form. If these mysterious vessels could do this to a full Imperial patrol fleet, what could they do to the Empire itself? The answer, he feared, was anything they wanted. The emergency session of Imperial High Command had been running for 18 hours. Grand Admiral Young Ho sat at the head of the massive conference table, studying reports that made no sense and listening to theories that sounded like science fiction. 2 separate encounters. 2 complete Imperial defeats, 0 enemy casualties. The technology gap is unprecedented, Dr. So-Young was saying, her voice hoarse from hours of briefing. The strategic analyst had been working without sleep since news of Commodore Dongwook's defeat reached the capital. Their energy absorption capabilities, their propulsion systems, their weapons technology, all of it is centuries beyond anything we possess. Defense Minister Kyung-soo slammed his fist on the table. "Centuries? These could be primitive aliens using some kind of trick technology. We're the Galactic Empire. We've conquered half the known galaxy." "With respect, Minister," Dr. So-Young replied, "that attitude is exactly what got Commodore Dongwook's fleet disabled. We're dealing with a force that treats our most advanced warships like training targets." Young Ho studied the holographic display floating above the table. It showed the locations of both encounters marked in red against the star map of Imperial space. The pattern was troubling. Both incidents had occurred at the outer edges of Imperial territory, as if something was probing their defenses. "What? Do we know about their numbers?" he asked. "Very little," admitted Intelligence Director Myung-jun. "The first contact involved one large vessel. The second encounter was 3 smaller ships. But, sir, if just 3 of their ships can disable an entire Imperial patrol fleet, the implications hung in the air like a dark cloud. If these mysterious enemies had dozens of ships, or hundreds, the Empire could be facing an existential threat. "We need more information," Young-ho decided. "Preparation of Battle Group Omega is authorized. Admiral Ki-moon will take command." Murmur ran through the room. Battle Group Omega was the Empire's elite rapid response force. 36 of the most advanced warships in the Imperial fleet, led by the massive dreadnought Universal Conquest. It was enough firepower to conquer an entire star system. "Sir," Dr. So-young said carefully, "might I suggest a more cautious approach? Perhaps diplomatic contact or a reconnaissance mission?" "The time for caution is over, Doctor," Young-ho replied. "These unknown forces have attacked Imperial vessels twice. They've shown no interest in communication. The Empire's response must be swift and overwhelming." 3 days later, Admiral Ki-moon stood on the bridge of Universal Conquest, watching his battle group form up around him. The sight filled him with confidence. 36 warships in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of the binary star system Ross 128, where Imperial intelligence had tracked the unknown vessels. Ki-moon was a veteran of the Centauri campaign and the Vegan War. He'd faced alien fleets before and emerged victorious every time. These new opponents might have superior technology, but they lacked experience fighting the disciplined formations of the Imperial Navy. "Contact on long-range sensors," reported Tactical Officer Dae-yoon. "Single vessel, bearing 27 Mark IV. "Just one ship?" Ki-moon asked. After the reports he'd read, he'd expected to find a fleet of the mysterious vessels. "Confirmed, sir. One contact, approximately 1,200 meters in length." Ki-moon studied the tactical display. The unknown ship hung motionless near the outer planet of the Ross 128 system, apparently unconcerned by the arrival of an entire battle group. Its design was unlike the smaller vessels from previous encounters, more organic-looking, with flowing curves that seemed to bend space around them. "Sir," Sensor Specialist Hee-young called out, "you need to see this." The main display shifted to show the readings from their most advanced sensors. Ki-moon felt his confidence waver as he studied the data. The enemy ship wasn't just large. It was radiating energy levels that dwarfed anything in Imperial records. "How is that possible?" he whispered. "Unknown, sir. The power source appears to be some kind of controlled fusion reaction, but the energy output is off the charts." Ki-moon straightened his shoulders. Big or small, it was still just one ship against 36. "Open communication channels, all frequencies. This is Admiral Ki-moon of the Imperial Navy commanding Battle Group Omega. You are in violation of Imperial space and have committed acts of war against Imperial forces. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." For several seconds, there was no response. Then the enemy ship did something that made every person on Universal Conquest's bridge stop breathing. It created a star, not a projection, not a hologram, but an actual miniature star that blazed to life between the strange projections extending from the ship's hull. The stellar fire burned bright white, held stable by forces Ki-moon couldn't begin to understand. The gravitational effects registered on every sensor in the battle group. For exactly 10 seconds, the enemy vessel held a newborn star in its grasp, like a toy. Then, as casually as it had been created, the star was allowed to dissipate harmlessly into space. The message was unmistakably clear. Any species that could create and control stellar fire could certainly destroy a few dozen warships. "Sir." "Communications," Officer Won-ho said in a shaky voice. "We're receiving a transmission." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something impossible. The bridge of the enemy vessel appeared before them in perfect holographic detail, but it was empty of any crew. Instead, floating in the center of the space was a three-dimensional display showing detailed schematics. Schematics of every ship. In Battle Group Omega, Kai Moon watched in growing horror as the display cycled through technical specifications for each of his vessels. Weapon positions, shield frequencies, armor thickness, crew complements, even the location of emergency supplies. Every detail of Imperial military technology was laid bare with casual precision. "How do they know all this?" whispered Commander He Jin, the fleet's intelligence officer. "Some of these specifications are classified at the highest levels." "They've been watching us," Ki Moon realized. "Not just at the first contacts. They've been studying the Empire, learning everything about our ships, our weapons, our tactics." The display changed again, now showing what appeared to be a tactical analysis of Battle Group Omega's current formation. Red indicators highlighted, weak points in their positioning. Predicted fire patterns showed exactly how Imperial weapons would perform against the enemy vessel's defenses. Even their retreat routes were mapped out and countered. Ki Moon felt sweat beading on his forehead. This wasn't just technological superiority. This was intelligence superiority on a level that made Imperial strategic planning look like children playing war games. "Sir, what are your orders?" Tactical Officer Da Yun asked. Ki Moon stared at the display, his mind racing through possibilities. Retreat would be the smart choice, but he had 36 of the Empire's best ships under his command. The unknown vessel might be advanced, but it was still just one ship. "All vessels, attack formation Charlie 9, he ordered. "We're going to find out what these aliens are really capable of." The 36 ships of Battle Group Omega moved into attack position, their weapons powering up for a concentrated assault. Ki Moon watched the tactical display, waiting for the perfect moment to give the order. "Fire!" he commanded. What followed was 23 minutes of systematic humiliation. The enemy vessel didn't just defend against the Imperial assault. It dissected it. Every weapon fired by Battle Group Omega was countered by defenses that seemed custom-designed for exactly those weapons. Plasma cannons were absorbed by hull systems that converted their energy into shield power. Kinetic weapons were deflected by gravitational fields that sent them spinning harmlessly into space. And the enemy's response was surgical in its precision. Each Imperial ship was targeted with weapons that exploited their specific weaknesses. The cruiser Stellar Hammer lost its engines to a beam that seemed to selectively destroy their drive coils. The battleship Iron Fist had its weapons systematically disabled one by one, each shot placed with impossible accuracy. Ki Moon watched his proud battle group fall apart with methodical efficiency. Every maneuver they attempted was anticipated and countered. Every tactical formation was broken by an enemy that seemed to know their doctrines better than they did. "Sir, we need to withdraw," Commander He Jin shouted over the alarms blaring throughout the bridge. "We're being torn apart." "All ships emergency retreat," Ki Moon ordered. "Jump to Rally Point Delta 4. But just like Commodore Dongwook's fleet, they found their hyperspace drives drained of power. The enemy had learned from the previous encounters and was prepared for every Imperial tactic. When it was over, 36 of the Empire's finest warships drifted powerless in the Ross 128 system. Their crews were alive, but their pride and their confidence in Imperial superiority were both dead. The enemy vessel hung among the wreckage of Battle Group Omega, apparently scanning each disabled ship. Then it transmitted one final message that chilled Ki Moon to the bone. A star chart appeared on his screen, showing every major Imperial world, every military installation, every fleet position. The accuracy was perfect, down to the smallest patrol stations, and overlaying it all was a simple message in perfect Imperial standard. "Resistance is futile." Emperor Jae-sung had never personally commanded a military operation in his 40-year reign. The ruler of the Galactic Empire was supposed to be above such things. managing policy and politics while his admirals handled the actual fighting. But the destruction of Battle Group Omega had changed everything. His personal flagship, Eternal Dominion, led a fleet of 60 warships through hyperspace toward the Ross 128 system. The entire Imperial Guard fleet, the most elite and powerful force in the Empire, was under his direct command. If the mysterious enemy wanted a war, they would face the full might of Imperial power. ETA to target system. 15 minutes, reported. Fleet Captain Tae Young from the navigation station. The bridge of Eternal Dominion was massive, befitting the flagship of an emperor. Dozens of officers worked at gleaming control stations, while holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the fleet. Emperor Jae-sung stood at the center of it all, wearing the ceremonial armor of his office. He had been briefed on the enemy's capabilities, had studied the reports from previous encounters, but he refused to believe that any force in the galaxy could stand against the full Imperial fleet. "Sir," Communications Director Min Ho announced, "we're receiving telemetry from the Ross system. The unknown vessel is still there, apparently waiting for us." "Waiting?" Jae-sung asked. "It hasn't moved from its position since Admiral Ki-moon's defeat. Long-range sensors show it maintaining a stable orbit near the outer planet." The Emperor frowned. A wise enemy would have fled after defeating Battle Group Omega, or at least repositioned to a more defensible location. Either these aliens were supremely confident, or they were preparing a trap. "Hyperspace exit in 30 seconds, Tae Young announced. Jae-sung took his position in the command throne at the center of the bridge. Around him, his fleet prepared for battle. 60 of the most advanced warships ever built, each one capable of destroying cities. The firepower under his command could crack planets and boil away atmospheres. "Exit hyperspace in 3, 2, 1, mark." The Eternal Dominion and her escort fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Ross 128 system. Immediately, every sensor on every ship locked onto their target. The enemy vessel hung exactly where intelligence had predicted, seemingly unchanged from Admiral Ki-moon's encounter. But as Jae-sung studied the tactical displays, he noticed something different. The debris field from Battle Group Omega was gone, cleared away as if it had never existed. "Sir," Sensor Specialist Hyun Jin reported, "I'm detecting unusual energy readings throughout the system. It's like the entire area has been cleaned." "Cleaned?" "All traces of the previous battle have been removed. Debris, energy signatures, even the electromagnetic echoes of weapon discharges. It's as if someone scrubbed the entire system." Jae-sung felt a chill run down his spine. The implications were staggering. Not only had the enemy defeated the Empire's finest battle group, they had the capability to erase all evidence of the battle afterward. The level of technological control that represented was beyond anything Imperial science could achieve. "Open all communication channels," he ordered. "Maximum transmission power." "Channels open, sir?" Jae-sung stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of 3 centuries of Imperial rule. "I am Emperor Jae-sung, ruler of the Galactic Empire, sovereign of 1,000 worlds. You have committed acts of war against my forces and my people. I offer you one chance to surrender and face Imperial justice. Refuse, and you will face the consequences of defying the Empire." For several long seconds, there was no response. The enemy vessel hung in space like a dark monument to power beyond understanding. Then, slowly, it began to transmit. What appeared on the screens of every Imperial ship was not an alien being or a diplomatic message. It was Commander Da-un of the Terran Deep Space Reconnaissance Corps, standing in the command center of what was clearly a human vessel. The silence on Eternal Dominion's bridge was deafening. Every officer stared at the screen in shock, their minds struggling to process what they were seeing. The enemy wasn't alien at all. It was human. "I am Commander Da-un," the woman on the screen said calmly. Her uniform was unfamiliar but clearly military, her bearing confident and professional. Behind her, the bridge of her ship looked nothing, like imperial designs, all flowing curves and organic integration of technology and architecture. I represent the Terran Deep Space Reconnaissance Corps, operating under the authority of the Earth Colonial Administration. You are Emperor Jae-sung of what you call the Galactic Empire, though I note your empire encompasses roughly 12% of this galaxy's habitable systems. Jae-sung felt the words hit him like physical blows. 12%. The empire that he thought controlled half the galaxy was actually a minor regional power. That's impossible, he managed to say. Earth was lost 600 years ago. Your records are incorrect, Commander Daun interrupted. Earth was never lost. Your records show a colony ship departing Earth 6 centuries ago, carrying 30,000 colonists to establish settlements in what you now call the inner worlds. What your records don't show is that this was one of hundreds of colony expeditions launched during that period. The holographic display behind Commander Daun changed to show a star map that made Jae-sung's blood run cold. Thousands of star systems were marked with the symbols of human colonies, spreading across the entire galaxy like a vast network of civilization. The area marked as imperial space was a tiny cluster in one small corner of the map. While your ancestors focused on conquest and expansion through military force, Commander Daun continued, the rest of humanity chose a different path. We developed our technology, explored the fundamental nature of reality, and built a civilization based on understanding rather than domination. The other encounters, Jae-sung stammered. Your ships destroyed Imperial fleets. Disabled, not destroyed, Commander Daun corrected. We have no interest in causing unnecessary casualties. The encounters you mention were evaluation missions, designed to assess whether your faction of humanity had developed into something worthy of contact. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried unmistakable disappointment. The assessment is complete. You have not. Jae-sung felt his world crumbling around him. The Empire, the great human expansion, the conquest of alien worlds, all of it was just a footnote in a larger human story that had been progressing without them for 6 centuries. Your technology, he said weakly. How is it possible? 600. Years of development focused on understanding rather than conquest, Commander Daun replied. While you were building bigger weapons to subjugate primitive aliens, we were unlocking the fundamental forces of reality: gravity manipulation, matter conversion, energy-space interface dynamics, consciousness technology integration. The tools we use seem impossible to you because your civilization chose to remain locked in the paradigms of force and domination. The display changed again, now showing detailed analyses of Imperial ships, weapons, and tactics. Every strength, every weakness, every tactical doctrine was laid bare with casual precision. Your Admiral Ki-moon was wondering how we knew so much about Imperial technology, Commander Daun said. The answer is simple. We've been watching your expansion for centuries, studying your development, hoping you might evolve beyond the primitive aggression that drove your original exodus from Earth. You've been spying on us, Jae-sung accused. We've been waiting for you to grow up, Commander Daun replied bluntly. Earth has protocols for recontacting lost colonies, but only those that develop beyond their original limitations. You've had 6 centuries to build something worthy of the human name. Instead, you created an empire based on the same fear and aggression that nearly destroyed Earth in the first place. Jae-sung looked around his bridge at the officers and crew who had served him loyally for decades. Their faces showed the same shock and devastation he felt. The foundation of their entire civilization had just been revealed as an illusion. What do you want from us? He asked. Nothing, Commander Daun said simply. Earth has no need of conquest or submission. We're simply informing you that your expansion is being monitored and evaluated. Continue your current path, and you will remain isolated from the greater human community. Prove that you can evolve beyond aggression and domination, and perhaps future contact will be possible. The transmission began to fade, but Commander Daeun's final words carried clearly across space. The choice is yours, Emperor, but choose wisely. The galaxy is much larger and more complex than your empire imagines, and there are forces in it that make our technology look primitive. You would be wise to prepare for that reality. The screen went dark, leaving 60 Imperial warships facing a single vessel that represented everything they thought they knew was wrong. Emperor Jae-sung stood in the ruins of his certainty, watching, as the Terran ship began to glow with the same impossible energy they had witnessed before. Without warning or fanfare, it simply vanished, not into hyperspace, not with the familiar energy signatures of Imperial FTL technology, but into something else entirely. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, leaving only empty space and the echo of revelations that would reshape the Empire forever. The journey back to the Imperial capital took 3 days. 3 days of silence on the bridge of eternal dominion. 3 days of Emperor Jae-sung staring out at the stars and trying to come to terms with what he had learned. The empire that he had ruled for 40 years, that his family had built over 3 centuries, was nothing more than a primitive offshoot of a civilization that had moved far beyond them. Fleet Captain Tae-young broke the silence as they approached the capital system. "Sir, we're receiving priority communications from the High Command. They're requesting immediate debriefing on the Ross 128 encounter." Jae-sung nodded absently. How could he explain to the High Command that everything they believed was wrong? That the aliens they feared were actually advanced humans who looked upon the Empire with disappointment and pity? "Sir, there's something else," Tae-young continued, his voice uncertain. "We're getting reports from across the Empire. Multiple contacts with unknown vessels, all using the same technology signatures we encountered at Ross 128. The Emperor felt his blood turn to ice. "How many reports?" 17 different systems, sir. The unknown ships are appearing at Imperial installations, military bases, and major worlds. They're not attacking, just observing." Jae-sung closed his eyes and took a shaky breath. The Terran ships weren't just monitoring the outer territories anymore. They were making their presence known throughout Imperial space. A clear demonstration that nowhere in the Empire was beyond their reach. "Any responses from our forces?" he asked. "A few local commanders have attempted to intercept the unknown vessels, sir. The results have been consistent with previous encounters. More defeats, more demonstrations of Imperial helplessness against technology they couldn't understand or counter. Each failed intercept would only reinforce the message Commander Daeun had delivered. The Empire was outclassed in every way that mattered. The capital world of New Terra appeared on the main screen, its sprawling cities and orbital installations gleaming under the light of its star. Jae-sung had always taken pride in the sight of his capital, the center of an empire that spanned dozens of systems and ruled over billions of people. Now it looked small and provincial, a tiny flame flickering in the vast darkness of a galaxy, controlled by forces beyond his understanding. "Sir," Communications Director Minho said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. High Command wants to convene an emergency session immediately upon your arrival." "Tell them to gather the full Imperial Council," Jae-sung ordered. "Every minister, every department head, every senior military commander. What I have to tell them will change everything." 2 hours later, Jae-sung stood before the assembled leadership of the Galactic Empire. The massive council chamber was filled with the most powerful people in Imperial space, all waiting to hear about the mysterious enemy that had humiliated their finest fleets. He looked out at their faces, seeing the mix of concern, curiosity, and barely contained fear that had driven them to request this emergency meeting. These were the men and women who had built the Empire alongside his family, who had conquered worlds and subjugated alien species, who believed absolutely in the Superiority of imperial civilization. In a few minutes, that belief would be shattered forever. My fellow citizens, Jae Sung began, I have returned from the Ross 128 system with information that will fundamentally change our understanding of the Empire's place in the galaxy. He activated the holographic display system, filling the center of the chamber with the star map Commander Da-un had shown him. The vast network of human colonies spread across the galaxy drew gasps of shock from the assembled leaders. The enemy we have been fighting is not alien, Jae Sung announced. They are human, citizens of Earth, which was never lost as our records claim. What we call the Galactic Empire is actually a minor colonial offshoot, controlling roughly 12% of human space. The chamber erupted in shocked voices and demands for explanation. Defense Minister Kyung-soo stood up, his face red with disbelief. That's impossible. Earth was destroyed in the resource wars. The colony ships were the only survivors. Earth was never destroyed, Jae Sung replied, his voice cutting through the noise. The colony ship that founded our civilization was one of hundreds sent out during that period. While we focused on military expansion and conquest, the rest of humanity chose a different path. Grand Admiral Young-ho leaned forward in his chair. Sir, with respect, how can we verify this information? It could be enemy propaganda designed to undermine our resolve. Jae Sung smiled bitterly. Because, Admiral, the enemy demonstrated capabilities that make our most advanced technology look like stone tools. They created and controlled a miniature star as casually as we might light a candle. They knew everything about our ships, our weapons, our tactics before we even arrived. And when they were done talking, they simply vanished using FTL technology that our sensors couldn't even detect. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. So Young, the strategic analyst, was the first to speak. Sir, if what you're saying is true, then we're facing an enemy that could destroy the Empire whenever they choose. Not an enemy, Jae Sung corrected. A disappointed parent. Commander Da-un made it clear that Earth has no interest in conquest or submission. They're simply monitoring our development, waiting to see if we can evolve beyond the primitive aggression that defines our current civilization. And if we can't, asked Intelligence Director Myung-jun, then we remain isolated from the greater human community until we learn to do better. Foreign Minister Hai Wan stood up, her voice shaky. What about the other alien species we've encountered? The primitives we've integrated into the Empire? Jae Sung activated another display, showing the tactical analyses the Terran ship had demonstrated. According to their data, every primitive species we've conquered was deliberately kept at low technology levels by more advanced civilizations. We've been fighting training scenarios designed by forces that were watching and evaluating our behavior. The revelation hit the chamber like a thunderbolt. Every conquest, every victory that had built imperial pride and confidence had been allowed to happen by intelligences that were studying human behavior like scientists observing lab animals. We've been living in a carefully constructed illusion, Jae Sung continued. A small corner of the galaxy set aside for us to play with while the real powers watch and judge whether we're worthy of joining the larger community. Commerce Minister Bo Gyung raised a trembling hand. What do we do now? It was the question that had haunted Jae Sung during the long journey home. The Empire's entire foundation was built on military superiority and the conquest of weaker species. If that foundation was false, if they were actually the weakest civilization in human space, then everything they had built was meaningless. We have two choices, he said finally. We can continue on our current path, expanding, through conquest and domination, remaining isolated from the rest of humanity until we eventually encounter something we cannot defeat. Or we can acknowledge that our approach has been wrong and begin the difficult work of changing our civilization. Change how? Grand Admiral Young-ho asked. By learning to build instead of destroy. By developing technology through understanding rather than warfare. by treating other species as equals rather than subjects to be conquered. Jae-sung paused, looking out at the faces of people who had spent their entire lives serving an empire built on opposite principles. The Terran commander made it clear that the galaxy contains forces that make their technology look primitive. If we continue on our current path, we will eventually encounter one of those forces, and they may not be as patient and forgiving as Earth has been. The chamber fell silent as the full weight of their situation became clear. The Galactic Empire, the great human expansion, the proud military tradition that had defined their civilization for 3 centuries, was all revealed as the fumbling of children playing with toys they didn't understand. "Sir," Dr. So-Young said quietly, "assuming we choose to change our approach, where do we even begin? Our entire government, our military, our economy, everything is built around expansion and conquest." Jae-sung smiled sadly. "We begin by admitting that we were wrong, that our ancestors chose a path that led us away from the rest of humanity rather than toward our potential, and then we start the long, difficult work of earning our way back." He spoke. Reports continued to flood in from across the Empire. Terran ships appearing at every major installation, their message clear and unmistakable. The Empire was being watched, evaluated, and judged by standards it had never imagined existed. The age of imperial expansion was over. Whether the age of imperial evolution could begin would depend on choices that went against everything the Empire had ever stood for. But as Jae-sung looked out at the shocked faces of his council, he realized that for the first time in 3 centuries, the Empire faced a challenge that couldn't be solved with bigger weapons and more aggressive tactics. They would have to become something better than they were or remain forever isolated from the civilization they had left behind. The choice, as Commander Da-eun had said, was theirs. But the consequences of that choice would echo throughout the galaxy for generations to come.